Hey folks, Piano Man Steve here from the Piano Man Approach, founder and creator of the Piano Man Approach online piano course. Thanks for joining me for hopefully a fun lesson here on how you can apply my song learning formula, which I call the G.L.I.D.E formula, to one of my favorite songs of all time, the smash #1 hit by Toto from the mid-'80s, Africa. So we're going to take a look at that in just a moment, but before we do, I just want to ask you humbly, if you enjoy content like this, I'd sure appreciate it if you'd give this video a like and maybe subscribe to my channel and click the bell if you would like some notifications going forward about new content like this being released. It really does help out a lot. Okay. But moving on from that, let's get into Africa. So the first thing that we always do with these little lessons using my formula is we kind of run you through the 5 steps of the formula, and then we start applying the steps of that formula on the song in question. So let's bring up my visual aid here for the old G.L.I.D.E formula and see what it is that we're supposed to do. As you can see, step #1 is get the chords. That's what the G stands for. And you can go to a simple Google search and type in the name of the song and the word chords. And a number of options will usually pop up. Usually at the very top will be one of my favorite resources, Ultimate Guitar Tabs. And what's going to happen is you'll get lyrics with chord symbols over the top. If you don't know how to read chord symbols, might want to check pianomanaapproach.com out. We've got some information on that. There's a lot of free resources on the internet that can give you at least a place to start with that as well. But we're going to be looking at chord symbols, not notes on the page. Okay. Once you get the chords, step 2, L, is listen to the song. So then you want to either look it up on YouTube, or maybe you want to go to Spotify or Pandora or Amazon Music, or one of the many, many options that you have to either listen for free, or if you are a subscriber, you can listen as well. Once you've heard the song, step #3 is identify the rhythm pattern, which we're going to talk about and get back to the piano here in just a second. And then after you've done that, you drill it down, which I will explain what that means. And then you enhance it with simple improv and signatures. So let's move back to the piano view here, and we'll get into this whole notion of identifying the rhythm pattern or the essential feel. So I have 4 essential feels that I teach over at the Piano Man Approach, and what it is 4 just sort of basic rhythm patterns, pretty simple rhythm patterns, that one of those 4 is going to approximate the feel of just about any recording that you've ever heard in the popular era. So what you want to do is, now that you've got the chords in front of you, you want to try running that chord progression through on these different rhythm patterns and see which one feels like it's the right place to start approximating this song. So let's try the basic feel, which is my first one. That's where you play quarter notes in the left hand. And just as sort of a fill-in, because the left hand's the most important part of a rhythm pattern, but just as something that you can start with to help create, get your chords going. We play on the counts 2 and 4 in the right hand. So like this. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to try the chord progression, which if you looked them up, what you'll find starting on the verses is that it looks like this has got a somewhat sophisticated chord progression actually, which is good because it shows that sophisticated songs can actually be learned this way as well. But it's like B major, then it goes to an E flat minor, then to a G sharp or an A flat minor, and then it goes to a B chord over an F sharp bass, and then it goes to an A chord over an E bass, and then this is a strange chord. It goes to an E major chord over an F sharp bass, and and then back to G sharp minor, and then A, and then to this G sharp minor, and then to C sharp minor. So when you play that in context with this rhythm pattern, you get something like this. Okay, so now that's our basic feel. That's the basic feel. Then we try it with the other rhythm patterns, see if one of them sounds more like the song. The next one was the heartbeat feel, which is the left hand going boom, thump, 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 like a heartbeat, and the right hand is quarter notes over the top of it. It's okay. Something about it seems to be a little bit lost, but it sounds kind of cool. Then the next one is the country feel, which doesn't necessarily mean it's a country song, but that's where you're playing the 1 of the chord followed by the 5 of the chord. So in this case, B to F sharp. And in the middle, you go B, chord, chord, like so. So you try that out. Definitely doesn't sound like Africa. The last one is actually a 3/4 or a 3/4 rhythm pattern for waltzes, so we know that's not it because this song has clearly got 4 beats per measure. So it's one of those 3, and I think that the one that sounds best is the basic feel, but you can choose the one that feels best to you. But the basic feel like this. So see how that dum, 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 dum. To me, that's what actually does the best job of approximating that rhythmic integrity created by the drums and the percussion in that song. 1, 2, 3, doom, doom, doom. So that's the one that I will use in this lesson. If you happen to like the heartbeat feel better, you're more than welcome to use it. This is art, not science. But so the next thing that you do after you've identified your rhythm pattern is we drill it down. What we mean by drill it down is before you start improvising and creating variations on your rhythm pattern, you really need to get the chords under your fingers. And this is a very important step that I think a lot of people like to gloss over. And it frustrates them because they're trying to do something when they're still having to dedicate too much brain power to where their right hand is moving, where the next chord change is. And as a result, they can't put their brain power on what they could do with their right hand besides this kind of boring, right? So what you want to do is just say, this is my rhythm pattern for now, and I'm just going to get all the way through the song successfully without making mistakes and get these chord progressions under my hands. So you drill it down like this, and it's going to look like Now, you might be saying to yourself, well, that doesn't really sound like Africa, Steve. Why are you asking me to do something so boring? Well, because this is the foundation that now we can build on and do lots of fun things. When you have that chord progression pretty well under your fingers, so you're not having to think too hard about what chords you're going to play next, and especially in a song like this that's in kind of a funky key with a lot of sharps and flats and has kind of sophisticated chords to begin with like strange bass notes and that kind of stuff. You really want to have that under your fingers. Now, what can we do differently with our right hand that will sort of help create a little more of that tribal beat that we have going on? Because we always want to serve the groove more than anything else. That's what's missing from most piano playing, is they don't serve the groove. So what can we do with the right hand that if we keep that nice kind of quarter note driving feel in the left hand going on, what can we do in the right hand that will really help make it sound a little more exotic and give a little bit more of that interesting rhythmic thing that goes on? Well, we want to use some syncopation probably. So, see, ba, da, ba, one, da, da, ba, ba. Watch that, how that changes things. Things like that can be done. It doesn't have to be robotic all the way through, but we can simply so see how sometimes I can even play a long note. Because interesting, sometimes less is more with the right hand. If the right hand plays a nice long sustained note, then what you're getting out of the left hand is just thump, 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 thump. And that actually gives it a percussive feel, and it's a very percussive song. So it's kind of making choices in the moment. You don't have to stick with one thing all the way through. But if your left hand is good and rock solid and just keeps that beat going, your right hand has all kinds of rhythmic options that it can choose from. The other thing that you can also employ are some simple improv techniques that you can apply on the chord. And I teach all of these in the Piano Man approach. And if you want to learn more about that, I've got a whole bunch of free stuff you can go check out at pianomanapproach.com. But you can do things like, what I like is toggling. I call it toggling, meaning that you take the chord and you play the top part of the chord with the top part of your hand and toggle down to the thumb and back and forth in interesting rhythms. So you can do things like... So see how I'm using that as a rhythmic device. Bump, 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 bump. Just a nice way to add a little bit of rhythmic flavoring to all of this. You know, like we've got our meat and our starch already kind of taken care of with just the left hand, right? This is where we throw in herbs and spices and vegetables and salt and sugar and all that kind of stuff, and that's where it gets fun. Arpeggiating is a fun thing that you can do, meaning that you split the chord up into its individual notes and just kind of play them in sequence up or down. And you don't have to do it constantly, but it's just a nice way to create either a little fill or something just to make a spontaneous choice in the moment to create something a little bit special or different in any given moment in the song. See, all I'm ever doing, I'm already on the chord. I was already playing that chord. I don't have to move my hand. I don't have to find any special notes or anything. I use the notes in the chord and simply go down or up. Or even down and then up. But the point is, there's a lot of great improv that you can do from where your hand already is. I like to be a very, very lazy player as much as possible. and it served me pretty well, and I like to teach that to other people too, because one of the best things that you find out is that if you get good at improving in one spot where your hand already was, then you can simply jump it an octave or two and get a lot of leverage by doing something you would do right here, and just do it here instead. But take it one layer at a time. Don't try to master something that's 5 orders of magnitude higher than where you are right now. Try to master something 1 order of magnitude higher than where you are, and then look for something 1 level above that, and watch that snowball go down the hill. So here we are. We've got our chords, we've got our rhythm pattern, and now we've got some improv tools. And so we can work our way through the song, and it starts out with this, which is also kind of something that you hear in the verse, but that's where they start. So it's like A, G sharp minor, C sharp minor. Okay? So we get that beat going. And they've got that little going on, right? You can accomplish something that approximates that with just some simple arpeggios on that chord. If you want to really get crazy, just to create that effect, you could do the same thing, except when you do the arpeggios, jump it up an octave. Now, one could say, well, Steve, why aren't you teaching me exactly what that lick is? Like, why aren't you teaching me exactly what David Paich was playing? Or it could have been Paich, and it might have also been Steve Porcaro in those days. Why aren't you teaching me an exact transcription? Well, for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, I don't try to teach most of the time what keyboard players were doing, because I'm teaching to people who are going to play the piano by themselves, and you're not a 5-piece ensemble. Okay, so if I teach you what the keyboard was doing, the keyboard was not designed to be a standalone part. It was part of a big ensemble. So we're trying to approximate the ensemble. Secondly, when I teach you these specific things, you don't have any transferable skills to do something similar in another song. And what I'm really trying to do here is teach you a method and an approach to playing that you can take to any song. You should be able to do this with any song and get something credible, something fun, something good happening with it when you understand how to use this method, which it doesn't have to take that long to learn, by the way. I have a 28-step course that actually walks you through step by step how to apply this method. You should, once you understand how to use it, be able to get to some degree of competency with a song within just, certainly 5, 10, no more than 30 minutes. It shouldn't take you weeks and weeks and weeks. You can always then refine these things and try and pick out the signatures more specifically and all of that. But you don't have to let learning the song be completely held up and sort of taken hostage by trying to get every little nuance down perfect from the very beginning. So that's why I just want you to understand that using an arpeggio like that is a sort of a low-hanging fruit for somebody who's, at a more beginner level even, and before you have access to, if you haven't gotten your ear to the point where you could pick that out just perfectly. So that's all I'm doing is taking that C sharp minor chord and it wouldn't matter if you're in that inversion or this inversion or this one. It just adds the illusion of that little signature. Okay? So back to what we were looking at here. Now that we've got some tools to work with, we've got a pretty good sounding little song here. See how all I'm doing here is coming down on a chord and then arpeggiating up and then toggling back to my thumb. So see how little things like that take us from this very bland to suddenly a song that's really coming to life. So that's what's fun about this, is that with just a few tools, but the really fun thing about using this method as opposed to, say, sheet music or following some YouTube tutorial by rote, is that the song stays fresh for you because you always get to make choices. You're always going to have the essence of the song under your fingers, but you get to keep making choices as you're playing it. So the song is always sort of born again new. Not so much because you play it so dramatically different every time, but just because in any given moment, you get to decide whether you're going to do this fill or this fill, whether the rhythm is going to be like this or just slightly different. And it's a spontaneous choice, so the song is a living, breathing entity, whereas once you learn something from a piece of sheet music and you're going to play it exactly that way every time, by the time you learn it, you've kind of chewed all the flavor out of the gum, you know? And so it's not as exciting to play. But for me, you know, the great thing about this is not only do you get to keep making choices, but you can learn it when you're a less advanced player and just have a very basic version, which is still fun. If you're a very, very beginning player and don't have a lot of momentum, it's pretty cool to hear Africa come alive, even if you're just going. But once you get a few more tools under you, you can keep making the song more interesting. The more nuanced, the more experience you get, the more little tricks that you come up with, and I teach hundreds of them in the Piano Man Approach Deep Dive course, but the more of those things that you can add in as you play over the course of time, the song just keeps evolving and getting more fun, more cool, more nuanced, more interesting to play, and that element of spontaneity, that element of you're making choices, so it's not exactly the same experience every time, keeps it fresh forever. So I really love that, and it allows you to be inside the song, you know, having the music emanate from you instead of the sort of spectator version of it where you're on the outside of the song. And so it's a pretty special thing to be able to do. This also works if you want to play the melody in the right hand. There's 4 additional steps, which I do not have a visual aid for, but I call them flow. And that simply is you find the melody, which could be, if you happen to read music, maybe you can find a lead sheet or a piece of sheet music and just read the melody line only. Or you might find a YouTube tutorial where someone's taught the melody to be picked out, or you can train your ear just to be able to pick out single note melodies. That's easier than people think. They're afraid they're tone deaf, but trust me, you can actually learn how to pick out single note melodies. If you can tell that this note and this note are not the same note, then you're not tone deaf. You don't have to know what interval they are or anything like that. But if you can tell that they're not the same pitch, then you're not tone deaf and you have what you need to be able to pick out single line melodies. You just need a little practice and a little guidance. But once you get the melody, then you lay that in over the top of the rhythm pattern. So then that would look like this. So once again, we kind of do a drill where we play it really, really, really simple first, because you want the melody under your hand and you want the rhythm pattern and the chord progression under your hand. Now, when you're comfortable with that, then we can start adding some layers. So that was lay it in over the rhythm pattern. The O stands for ornament. And there's a couple of different things you can do with ornament, okay? One thing is you return to the rhythm pattern in the right hand in the gaps in between the melodies. So see how I got back to playing the chords as soon as there was a gap in the melody? Another thing is that you can harmonize the melody a little bit. And there's a number of different ways you can do it. My favorite one is to just sort of play the chord that belongs there and let it sustain while you play the melody under it. It just gives it a little thickness. So I'm not trying to play rhythmically the chords yet. I'm just trying to play the chord. So see how I'm just kind of adding a chord and keeping to play the melody. Then the next step after that is, can you then do a little more rhythmically with the chord with the bottom part of your hand while you play the melody with the top part of your hand? That's a more advanced technique, but you can work yourself up to it. Now, personally, I like to sing and play, but just showing you that learning this sort of accompaniment style thing first is actually the best way to prepare yourself to add the melody, because the main thing that most sheet music is missing is pace and groove. And so it gets kind of empty, you know, because they don't have that thing that's kind of approximating what the trap set, what the drum set and the bass guitar are doing. And that's what your left hand is for. So you add the melody into the rhythmic accompaniment, not put the melody in first and then try to add accompaniment around it. And most people do that backwards, which is why a lot of people are really dissatisfied with what they can do with popular music when it comes to written sheets. And that's kind of what I do that's a little different. So when I have to, I can always play the melody. I am more of a singer myself, but I certainly have have had many, many occasions when playing the melody was more appropriate, and not all of you are going to want to sing. But this is a fun approach to playing the piano that is different. A lot of piano players who took traditional lessons were taught chord symbols, but were never taught what to do with them. So they have no idea how to actually make the song come alive from chord symbols, even though they know what they are. If you are a total beginner, this is a great way to learn, because this comes together a lot faster, in my view, for about 99% of people than learning how to read notes on a page will. And a lot of people just frankly do not have the time or the years at this point in their life, and when they're balancing career and family and all this other stuff, to put in hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of practice the way you need to get good at reading notation on a page. It becomes something that drives more people away from the instrument than welcomes them into it. So I'm not trashing it as a modality. I'm simply saying that it's not something that is really, I don't find it to be a real harmonious fit for a lot of people's lifestyles, particularly if they're already, if they're not in second grade being forced to do it by their mom. I just think it's a difficult row to hoe. So I love this method, and if you're curious about it, you can learn a whole lot more about it over at pianomanapproach.com. I've got some free stuff for you there. And of course, if you want to buy the course, that's great. But I just want you to go check it out, and hopefully you'll learn something there that you'll be able to take with you and enjoy for the time to come. And if you feel like I'm a good teacher for you, and I've got the right temperament and attitude and modality for you, then sure, we can go deeper in at that point. But at this point, I'm just trying to get the information out to as many people as I can. So hopefully this has been valuable for you. If you're a more advanced player, you might have learned enough to actually be able to sit down and play the song. And if you are not that advanced of a player, hopefully this has brightened your eyes a little bit to how music can be approached, and rather than just focusing on learning one song at a time, and that's the equivalent of just getting a fish when you're hungry, maybe you can learn how to fish so that you can play any song that you want. And that's the purpose of this method, so that you can play any song that strikes your fancy. So I will stop talking for now. I appreciate you tuning in. Remember, I really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe if you enjoy content like this, and click the bell if you'd like notifications for future content. And especially remember my mantra: if you're not having fun when you're making music, you're doing it wrong. Happy playing, and I will see you on the next video. Take care.